Along with this wide assortment of rare motorcycle parts, you'll also see some of the world's rarest and most exotic machines. Take this red Indian, for instance. Just check out the linkage system on those handlebars. I mean, how old is old? Well, these guys ride around all day long on these 1911 classics. Some of the people who originally rode them probably fought in the Civil War. But not everything here is old. For instance, take a look at this Briton. It's a total carbon fiber frame motorcycle. Or maybe you need something a little bigger. Maybe a whole lot bigger. Yes, it runs, but don't expect to keep up with any modern day sport bike, except maybe on a straight line. Or maybe you prefer style over size. Well, then take a look at this Indian. It's almost as beautiful to ride as it is to look at. Just park it in the middle of the living room and stare at it. I took a trip down to Burlingame, California, just south of San Francisco, to visit an antique and modern motorcycle shop to learn more about these older bikes. The name of the place is Vince's Antique and Modern Cycle Supply. We caught up with Vince and asked him about some of these rare and antique motorcycles.
Some of your older bikes, like a Crocker, that was a company out of the Los Angeles area, if I'm not mistaken, and that was a powerhouse machine. And it's a shame that they didn't last as long as they did, whether it was the price or whatever. But these are some of the bikes that were ahead of the time. You ran into Ace or Cleveland, and these are some of the other manufacturers. But they went through a lot of changes of different companies trying to buy them out, or blending with the other companies. So they didn't last as long. But at one time there was over 100 different American-made motorcycle manufacturers in the United States. And they went from the teens on up to the 20s. By the 20s, a lot of them sizzled out. They couldn't compete, to where Harley and Indian lasted a little bit longer than everybody else. And of course, Harley's still going strong now. Pretty soon they're going to be celebrating 100 years. So it'll be the oldest American-made motorcycle manufacturer still in existence. So that's a lot to tell you right there. Well, the hard part of finding some older parts is finding the part in the first place. Then once you found the part doesn't always mean that it's available for sale. So you run into the stories of what you might have to trade for it. And so with a little bit of wheeling and dealing, if you can come up with the right items that the other person might want, you might acquire the part. But not all the time, just because you found the part, does it mean it's available for trade. So it gets tough. And the older and the rarer the part is, the tougher it is. As far as the collectability of the bikes, it seems that the original paint motorcycles are really holding their value well. Harleys, Indians, and so on, nice original paint bike, because it's untouched, still holds its originality. And I think they're holding value the best. Well, as far as poor features goes, it depends what era we're talking. I mean, each manufacturer had problems. The four-cylinder motorcycles, the cranks weren't that strong, so they used to break. And I think that's why some of these companies still don't exist. And then you get into other companies to where the steel pistons inside there were no good. And so, they just kept on upgrading from there. Most of the early bikes had band brakes. So once you started rolling and applying these brakes, they got hot and then even worked worse. So I imagine the brakes were probably pretty bad on a lot of the older bikes, but then again, they didn't have the traffic that we have nowadays too, so they got away with a lot more. But if you put somebody on one of them older bikes now, it'd be a lot more dangerous on the streets. So that's why most of your earlier runs, they pick a sighting outside of you know, a popular town, like they'll go into the mountains and do it during the week to where they don't run into all the traffic problems. Yeah, we were in Wyoming one time, and a buddy of mine broke down as far as getting them repaired to get back home. We popped the cylinders off inside the hotel room, and we bored one cylinder to 70 over, and he was probably 20 over in the other. So he had a little compression difference there, but he made it back home. Most of these bikes are pretty repairable on the side of the road. You know, you could either baling wire them together, or a good roll of duct tape. You could hold stuff on that usually falls off.
Well, I hope you liked the show. I hope you learned something. Next week on Motorcycle Television, stay tuned, because we're going to be watching some races from inside the pits and inside the racer's head. Next week on Motorcycle Television, it's Race Week.